Hello, and welcome to this session entitled Piano Adolescence, Surviving and Thriving in the Middle. There is also a handout that goes along with this, and it has more information in it than I have time to cover. The intermediate level is a period in piano study that should build upon a solid elementary foundation to prepare students to play advanced level repertoire. Students need to play a broad array of repertoire, focusing on very specific competencies, goals, and objectives. Unfortunately, students often move too quickly through this level and thus don't achieve the necessary skills and conceptual understanding. A clear, focused curriculum can help students not only survive this transition period, but thrive as they move more easily into difficult repertoire. I'm going to share my screen with you now, and that will give you access to my PowerPoint. Some of the potential problems that intermediate level students have to survive include overemphasis of finger technique that fails to connect everything that they do with their entire body with the sound that they are producing, physical tension that comes from playing pieces too hard too soon, a lack of ability to control multiple musical elements, lack of development of musicianship and artistry, often due to an overemphasis on technique, boredom and possible lack of interest that can come from playing only a few overly difficult pieces because it takes so long to learn them. To help our students thrive, there are some important guiding principles for teachers. Make sure that lessons are instructive rather than corrective. If you're spending most of your teaching time correcting notes and rhythms, I would encourage you to return to those fundamentals in easier elementary level repertoire before tackling the intermediate level. Focus on specific musical concepts and skills rather than just repertoire. Introduce and have students learn concepts and skills in their easiest settings first. Easiest settings often have more patterned and consistent musical elements. Use multiple pieces to practice a variety of patterns in different settings until students master them before moving on to more difficult music. And foster transfer of learning using a spiral approach in which foundational concepts and skills continue to return in ever-increasing difficulty levels of music. When selecting repertoire and planning a curriculum for intermediate level students, there are a number of important factors to consider. Traveling and mobility. How far do they have to move? How fast do they have to get there? And do the leaps change direction frequently? Speed and technical requirements. Patterns such as Alberti basslines, scalar passages, and broken intervals are much easier in eighth notes at moderate tempi rather than in 16th notes. Technical requirements also involve control of all musical elements. The length of a piece affects physical stamina and concentration. Students should not be playing overly long pieces or pieces that require them to spend a lot of time just learning the notes. Musical requirements. This area of development is often challenging and somewhat neglected at this level, but it's extremely important to develop prior to advanced performance. Some of the key musical elements are listed in your handout, and all of these elements are very important in developing artistry. Texture is one of the most significant determinants of difficulty level. How many different things is the pianist being asked to do or to control at one time? There are generally 3 recognized textures. Monophonic textures involve one line of music and includes prelude-style pieces and other pieces that split one line of music between the 2 hands, often at fast speeds. This monophonic repertoire requires consistency of sound and phrasing that moves between hands. Homophonic textures are melody-dominated textures that include homorhythmic pieces such as hymns or chorales, or pieces with melodies that have various types of accompaniment patterns. Polyphonic textures are contrapuntal pieces with more than one independent musical line. Polyphonic music will bring a number of challenges to the intermediate level student, especially when there is more than one independent line within each hand. So today we're going to look at examples of specific competencies or settings that students should master regarding the performance of melodies, and especially how melody is affected by texture. Due to time, we're only going to look at single line melodies. Some of these melodies resemble a typical vocal line, while others may be considered more instrumental in nature. A monophonic texture consists of a single line of music without any accompaniment. The easiest melodies to perform will be single line melodies in the right hand. Since many individuals are right hand dominant, technical skills are often more developed in the right hand than in the left hand. Right hand melodies are also composed in a range that is generally easier for more individuals to hear clearly. Forgotten Romance is a great introduction to the music of Liszt. It provides an opportunity for students to play a single line, the improvisatory style cadenza-like melody that's common in the advanced music of Liszt. The student can also work on matching fading tone, shaping, gesture, pacing, and arrival points. Left-hand melodies are by nature more difficult because they are infrequent and also lower in the range. It is much easier for performers to focus orally on a melody in the uppermost voice than to listen to a melody that is lower in the range and underneath an accompaniment. Since the left hand often is used for playing accompaniments rather than melodies, a performer's left hand may not be as developed in performing lyrical singing melodies. Gillick's Deserted Ballroom provides a beautiful melody that has almost no accompaniment in the right hand, allowing the student to focus on the shaping of the melody. I'm including it here in the monophonic texture since there are almost no accompanying chords, even though technically it is homophonic. A single line melody that moves between the two hands requires careful matching of tones. Students should begin this skill by studying melodies that move between the two hands in a limited manner, with less frequent changes, a narrow range, and consistent legato articulation. Schumann's little study provides a very patterned example of this. An example of a more instrumental melody between the two hands is Burgmüller's Agitato. The quick alternation between the two hands at the allegro vivace tempo is much more challenging, although the range remains fairly limited. Rapid changes back and forth like this also require careful attention to larger pulse groupings. Students will likely default to an eighth note pulse, which would prevent them from gaining speed as well as a longer phrase. example is an etude by Heller, in which the hands alternate frequently. Note that the right hand alternates playing melody notes with notes that are a part of the accompaniment. This requires a lot of awareness and quick adjustments in control of the tone. Single line melodies that move between the two hands and involve hand crossings add an additional technical challenge. Both the rate of speed at which one or both hands must cross, combined with the distance that the crossing hand must travel, will influence the difficulty level. It is crucial that the performer maintains technical freedom and fluidity of movement when crossing hands in order to produce a smooth tonal and dynamic musical line. Since both dynamics and tone color are affected by the speed of attack into each note, the performer will need to carefully control the speed of attack on the notes that are played during the hand crossing, which is the melody notes. A difficult type of single line melody that moves between hands is a melody that alternates every pitch. This type of melody presents a number of challenges for the performer: rhythmic precision and metrical continuity, technical freedom and consistency, voicing of a melodic line within a line, and tonal consistency. Asturias is not necessarily an intermediate level piece, since if you know this piece, you know that it gets quite challenging as it unfolds, but it does provide a good example of alternating hands. Let's move on to homophonic textures. Perhaps the most prevalent and most varied texture in Romantic period music is the homophonic texture, which is a melody-dominated texture. The easiest homophonic textures will be those that are the most consistent and patterned in one or more musical elements. Some examples of this would be consistency of articulation, such as legato melodies with legato accompaniment, or detached melodies with detached accompaniment, a consistent patterned rhythm in both hands, or a consistent harmonic rhythm. An excellent piece for shaping melodic contours is Burgmüller's Sincerity. The continuous even eighth notes in the right hand are easier to control than a melody with multiple note values. The sustained chords in the left hand are standard chord progressions in close position, allowing the pianist to focus almost completely on the melody. In Sweet Dreams, a lyrical melody in the left hand is accompanied with offbeat chords. Students must pay careful attention to the melody while also shaping the accompaniment chords appropriately. This is the middle of the piece. This is the B section, and I'll be starting on the second line on your screen. The popular Wild Rider also has an intermittent chordal accompaniment. It is important not to accent the melody notes every time that the left hand plays a chord so that you can maintain a longer phrase. In Bergmüller's Pastoral, the repeated chordal accompaniment threatens to take the pianist's attention away from the longer notes in the melody. Students must continue to listen through the long notes in the right hand and keep the repeated chords very light to avoid interference with the melody. The same problem can occur in a piece such as Happy Farmer that has also a detached accompaniment. Again, the pianist must pay careful aural attention through the dotted notes in the melody and not let the repeated chords interfere. Gillock's Autumn Sketch presents a melody accompanied by broken chords that might cause the student to play the melody sounding like it is wandering back and forth between the two hands. More tone on the melody using the wrist and arm and a light flowing left hand will help to keep the melody sounding continuous. Romantic melodies are often accompanied by jump bass patterns. In the Tchaikovsky mazurka, the jump bass chord on beat 3 has to remain tonally connected to the left hand and not interfere with the long half notes in the melody. In Grieg's waltz, the jump bass pattern is split between the two hands, making a much more complicated texture that will require careful voicing in the right hand. The beautiful old French song provides an opportunity for the pianist to work on sweeping gestures in long phrases. The left hand has a more complicated multi-voice accompaniment that approaches polyphony. Frequently, a composer will write a single line of music that includes both a melody and an accompaniment within the same line, which may be referred to as a line within a line. In this type of writing, the composer has succeeded in giving the illusion of creating another musical line, even though another line has not really been added. The melody may be found on the top, middle, or bottom. Melodies on the top may be the easiest to perform. Melodies on the bottom may be the next easiest. And the melodies that fall in the middle of some figuration will likely be the most challenging. So in Burgmüller's Confidence, the melody is on the top. In Gillick's Soaring, the melody is in the thumb. It's written in a beautiful range of the keyboard. And finally, Burgmüller's The Spring has the melody in the middle of some figuration. Let's try that one once more. I think I can do a better job of that. I hope you enjoyed this journey through such a variety of different melodic content. In this limited session, we were only able to scratch the surface of this topic, and only in Romantic period music. But I hope that it has given you more of an awareness of the many different skills that intermediate level students must develop in the wealth of wonderful repertoire. Thank you.